with all those big gulps, how many bathroom stops were there on the way then
So that's
too?
a whole other story. So I not this time, not many. I don't know. Maybe my control has gotten better, but no. So going the very first time we made the drive, there was no young kids, so this is completely irrelevant. But it's a fun story anyway.
Welcome to the Travel Genie Show. You are here for some Disney tips, tricks, and pineapple whips. We have cast members me, Brandy, Joel, and Corey, our fabulous annual pass holder Sherida, and our equally fabulous DVC member Allie. We are all travel advisors, and we are here to help you actually enjoy your Disney vacation instead of stressing about it. Today I am really excited while Corey and Allie are off recovering from their Disneyland trip. Sherida, Joel, and I are going to be discussing how to get to your Disney park of choice with young kids. Do you fly? Do you drive? We are going to throw some tips all in along the way, and it's going to be great. So, of course, these tips are going to apply for any kind of travel destination, not just Disney parks. So we've got something for you no matter what trip you have planned. So first, what is one thing you should consider when deciding whether to drive or fly with young kids? I'll have Joel take it away.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So when deciding whether to fly or drive, I think there's several different things that you could look at. One is distance. So I am up in Massachusetts, so driving is a hike, but I've done it several times with young kids. And so, but if you're only taking a 5-day vacation, then you probably don't want to spend 4 days in the car. You'd rather spend that time down at Disney World or on a cruise or whatever. And especially for me, Disneyland, I'm probably not making that drive. But cost is a huge factor, and so that's honestly why we've driven several times because flying, especially as your family grows, it can get super expensive. And so there's a number of different things that I know I definitely take into account when debating really whether I'm going to fly or drive. Those are probably the two biggest factors. Some of it may also have to do with how your son or daughter, prince or princess, handles flying versus driving. So I've heard horror stories and experienced horror stories in both cases where maybe my daughter was over the flight or over the drive. And so, um, I don't know if there's a one size fits all. It definitely is going to vary, but those are some things that I definitely am thinking about when trying to decide if this next trip, am I driving or flying? I know I prefer flying, that's for sure, because it is just for us it's a 2-hour flight, and so you can't beat it. You could, you know, get on the plane at 9 a.m. and you're in the parks by noon or at your resort enjoying the pool. And so flying is definitely, I think, the preferred method, but it just isn't always in the budget.
So I definitely said, what is one thing you should consider? And you just gave like,
Nine things, nine
I'm
things.
just Sherida, do you have anything you want to
No,
add?
I am a travel advisor, not a mathematician.
Can I just say ditto? Ditto to Joel?
Sure.
Thank you, Joel.
Um,
Show over. All right, that's it. Thanks for tuning
um, okay, so I'll definitely like throw in there, like obviously some things that are going to come into play when you're deciding, like if you know your kid gets car sick, like maybe they won't get air sick or vice versa. Like you're obviously going to need to kind of like go based on that. If you have a family member who's deathly afraid of flying, you know, that's something you're going to have to work through or figure out. Depending obviously on where you're located. You talked about distance. I think that's totally valid. I live in Virginia right now, and so it's super common for people to drive from where we are. I will say from personal experience though, I will not, absolutely not make that long drive with young kids. And my husband actually drove down while my daughter and I flew the last time, and just so we would have access to the car and all of their things. And even he, like driving down in one day, was like, yeah, I'm never doing that again. Like, we'll figure it out some other way. So yeah, I would not do that myself. If I lived a lot closer, if I was within, 6 hours, then it would be a different story, but I would much rather fly in a heartbeat.
Hour and a half.
Yeah, see, okay, Jared is obviously gonna drive.
Well,
It
so
would take longer for you to fly.
It might be quicker some days on I-4. Yes, it might be quicker to fly. I-4 is horrible. No, when we lived in Washington State, we of course went to Disneyland a lot, and I will say it was very convenient to fly, obviously, and not make the drive. One thing though that was very difficult was packing the strollers and car seats. That was just when we had 2 and 3 kids, not all 5. um, but it was nice to have their own equipment. But now it's become more common. You can rent strollers at your destination, even car seats. But on the other hand, flip side too, that's also another expense to possibly consider. But yeah, driving, I guess I don't think I ever would have been able to do it with my kids. Like you said, Joel, my kids were not great travelers when they were little. It would have been a bit of a nightmare. So, glad we could
How far?
fly to land. Glad I can drive to World.
How far is the drive from Washington to Disneyland?
I don't know. I know people have done it. I think it's a couple of days. It's definitely not something you can do just because you're going from here all the way down California. So
Yeah, one of my college program roommates was from Oregon, and I know he made the drive often with like several times each year with his family. But I don't know if I ever got how long it was, but it seems like a hike.
the other thing too is there's like so many places to stop along the way too. It's like it's a very pretty. It would be a very pretty drive, but yeah.
That's a good point, Shared. Something to keep in mind is the type of drive you're doing. So, like, I know Brandy, you just did a road trip recently, and so I do love road tripping, and so that's a whole other can of worms because, especially, for me driving up and down I-95, like, there's many places you can stop in D.C., New York, um, the Carolinas, and so even St. Augustine and Florida, and I can't remember. There's an island that a lot of people go to in Florida, and so yeah, if you're road tripping, then maybe that does make sense. If you want to do like a 2 week venture, 1 week road trip, 1 week at Disney, and then hustle back type of deal, that would definitely be fun, and I'd be on board for that. But again, it some of that depends on what your vacation time is. If if yeah, and again, that's such an important thing for us because we don't always want to take 4 days to make the drive. It's a lot on the drivers. It's a lot on the kids, and so I know my daughter. The last time we did it, she was getting a little older, and like we got like 2 hours in the drive, and she was just like, "Daddy, why this takes so long?" And it's like, "Oh, we are just getting started."
Well, and you don't want to arrive to your destination Disney tired either, because you are going to need your energy to take on Disney.
Right. Well, and I'll totally speak to the road trip end of things because that is actually what we did on our last trip. So my husband drove the car down, but we all drove back in road trip fashion. So we actually spent, I think it was 4 days traveling back from Florida to Virginia. And so we stopped in Savannah, we stopped in Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head, which, by the way, Hilton Head, Disney has a resort there. It's one of the DVC properties, and it's very hard to get into, but you can actually go up and you can park off-site. There's another parking lot you're allowed to park in. You can walk through, and there is a little like quick service spot that you can go to that's in the back, and they have Dole Whips. So if you want Dole Whips outside of Disney World while you're in Hilton Head, just saying, definitely had a Dole Whip there. So we did the road trip thing, and that was, it was good. I'm completely with you. Like that is a different plan and story than it is if you're trying to drive all the way through with no stopping. Because with an almost 3-year-old at the time, like we couldn't go more than 2.5 hours without stopping and letting her get out to play or, do something. It was too much. So, and doing more than like 6.5 or 7 hours of driving in the day, like that was just asking for a whole nightmare. So like we didn't do that.
Yeah, one of the things that we did the last time now, I think it's like a 22-hour drive for us, or 20-hour drive, um, is, we left right before my daughter's bedtime. And so, our hope was that she would sleep through the night. And so that's one of those that I see often recommended. And it's one of those things where some of that I think depends on kind of the child and how how your trip starts off. And so the first time we took a we drove with my daughter, we hit an accident, or we ran it, we hit traffic due to an accident. Thankfully we were not involved. And my daughter was younger and she could not fall asleep without that like car motion.
Ooh.
And so right out of the gate, we got stuck, whole bunch of traffic, and then she couldn't fall asleep, and then she's overtired, and it all just compounds, and then it makes for a very, very long drive. Now, the last time, it was one of those things where she kind of tinkered around. As it got dark, she got more tired. She definitely was a bit annoyed again that we were in the car. Like I said, why is this taking so long? But ultimately, around 10, 11 o'clock, she was pooped and did fall asleep. And then we did have one incident where she woke up in the middle of the night and then was like, "Where am I?" and started
Oh,
freaking out. And so
oh.
we had to pull off at a rest area and console her and give her some fruit snacks and bribe her to calm down and go back to sleep. But she was able to fall back asleep. And so that one was definitely a lot easier. But it's one of those things where I think I would do the through the night again, but it's also difficult on parents because, I know I was the one that took the overnight shift, and it's one of those things where you have to caffeinate up and try to get a nap in the day, and that doesn't always work out. And so, especially if you have a hotel booked on the other end, you have to kind of get there when you get there. And so, if you have a rough day at work or whatever, that leaving day, maybe that does create issues. And so, and actually coming back, we had a big issue. And I know I'm like, now it sounds like I'm dogging on the driving method, but I'm really not actually. As a kid, and then I'll tell the story about the drive back. But as a kid, we always drove. Like we never flew as a kid. And I have a lot of memories from that of driving through, the mountains. Um, across the country, and just a lot of fond memories of us doing Mad Libs in the car. And I remember I got like those ink pen coloring books every time we would road trip, and it was always a good time. So I definitely have fond memories of it as a kid. It is a lot more work as an adult, but it's still absolutely worth it. Um, Especially when you're, driving new places. Like I know I'm excited to start doing the license plate game with my daughter, who's now going to be old enough to kind of recognize the license plates and different things like that, and just do like Mad Libs and random games in the car, I Spy and that sort of thing. But
Yeah, and that's like a really good point. I'll just like throw in there, like
yeah,
just for reference of what we're talking about here. So I have a 3-year-old now. Joel, you have a 4-year-old and
4-year-old,
an
yeah,
infant now.
yes,
And Sherida, your children are grown. So that's the position that we are kind of talking from right now. And I think that's a great point, Joel, that when we're talking about young kids, like under the age of 4, this is a very different discussion than it is when we're talking about kids who are like 5 to 10, where you can play all those fun games and like throw them in front of a screen and those kinds of tactics. But no, I want to hear about their story coming back now.
yes. So I'd love to say that nobody ever gets sick at Disney. It's the Disney bubble. It never rains. It's always sunny and 80 degrees, and nobody ever gets sick. No, that would be a lie. So my wife, when we were driving back, um, again, I think it's like a 22 hour drive, and we went straight through. My wife kicked off the drive so I could get a little bit of sleep. We left at like right after dinner. It was like 6 o'clock at night. And so my wife kicked off the drive, and then I was going to take over pretty much when she got tired, around 11 midnight. And so we switch off. And then when the sun starts coming up is when we're going to switch off again. That way she could kind of get a good night's sleep. I'm a night owl, so that's my default anyway. And so, I'm getting groggy and don't want to push it. So I attempt to wake, or I wake her up, and she's not feeling well, and she clearly has a fever. She's shivering, like it's not. She's just not feeling well, and so, um, now it's, can she even do the drive? And so she attempted to, the saint that she is, she drove like 45 minutes and it's like, no, this is not going to happen. And so I got my little power nap in, and then took over. And at that point, I made the rest of the drive. And so we definitely had to make several stops. It was definitely a longer trip back, and it is just what it is, and you roll with the punches. Caffeine it up, the giant big gulps that they sell at, like, oh my gosh, what's the gas station, Flying J, and whatever. You get the big gulps, but yeah.
So
So,
I'm curious
again,
about
it's
with
one
all
of those
those big
things where
gulps,
you never know what's going to happen on a road trip.
how many bathroom stops were there on the way then
So that's
too?
a whole other story. So I not this time, not many. I don't know, maybe my control has gotten better, but no. So going the very first time we made the drive, there was no young kids, so this is completely irrelevant, but it's a fun story anyway. The first time my wife and I made the drive straight through was for Thanksgiving, and we were poor, college students, and couldn't afford a. It was like, $1,000 a person to fly, and we were like, yeah, no, not in the college student budget. So the very first time we drove, we were like, we're gonna do this. We're young, like, let's, like, we can go straight through. And again, the same thing. I took the night shift, and I did drink all of these big gulps. Like, I'm talking about like the 32 ouncer, like, caffeinated beverages, and I don't know how many I had, but when we switched off, I had to use the restroom like every like half hour, and my I thought my wife was gonna leave me behind in like the Carolinas. It's like, we're done with you. Like, she was so annoyed because it just, you know, when you gotta go, as Jeff Goldblum says in Jurassic Park. So it is what it is. But yeah, no. So yeah, but I to me we talk about flying versus driving. Like, flying is a mode of transportation, and you're going to do it because you need to get to, Disneyland, Disney World, wherever. Obviously you can't drive to Shanghai or Disneyland Paris, but Disneyland, Disney World, you're going to fly just because you want to get there quick. You're excited to be boots on the ground and experience Disney. To me, the drive has many more lasting memories with me, whether it's my childhood or the drives that my wife and I have taken with our kids. And so it's one of those things where, in the moment when you want to strangle each other, that somehow our brain twisted into a great, funny, the Simpsons version story that you'll laugh about for ages to come. And so, like, every holiday when we're getting together, these are the stories that we're telling. And so, that's again one of those things where you're developing memories with families. Maybe, do you want to rush down, or do you want to create, memories that last a lifetime? And so it is a great debate on whether you fly or drive. It's just interesting.
For
So
sure.
what I'm hearing is not every trip has to be Wally World.
Right.
Very true.
Well, and I would say it has a lot to do, like, you definitely have to know who you are as parents and as, and who your children are. Like I said, my child is actually a pretty good, like, rider in the car, but, we know we know what she can handle. Like, we know what she can't handle, trying to think that, we are all going to still, like each other at the end of a, 10-hour driving day is not possible, because what should have been 10 hours is now 15 hours because of all the stops we had to make, and nobody's in a good mood, and I can't do the whole driving through the night thing because my daughter might be fine, but I'm not going to be either functional or in a good mood in the morning. So like, that's not a good fit for me. But I also think that flying is so great for my sanity, just because I can attend to my child's needs and I can keep her a little more occupied, and cool, we need to go to the bathroom. Okay, well, it's not like I'm going to pull over and then find a clean gas station, because those don't exist. And then going over here, and then, okay, well, now we've got to, maybe she's afraid of the toilet. And then, okay, we got to get back up, and then we get back in the car, and then we get going. And 10 minutes later, she has to go again. And, you know, flying is like, okay, well, at least we're still moving while we do all of that, you know? So there's
And that
some
those are
of
some
my
good
sanity at
points.
stake.
And to throw out some tips, we talk about tips and tricks. Some
Yes.
tips that I have found is one, put a parent in the back seat if you can. So obviously that doesn't work now in my family situation now that we have, 2 kids. And eventually you'll have the bluey bingo situation where they can entertain each other. But especially what we found absolutely did not work. Even for when we're going to like Cape Cod, which is like a 2-hour drive for us, it does not work when it's my daughter in the back seat and then mom and dad in the front seat. She gets annoyed, she feels left out, and then it's just the constant struggle. And so, and like you said, like, can you tend to her needs? And so having one of the parents in the back seat has always been helpful, because when she's like, "Oh, I want a snack," we don't have to pull over. It's just, okay, let's grab that backpack and we have a snack. And "Oh, I'm tired of coloring. What else do we have?" And then it's again a parent's in the back seat to grab whatever else is back there. And so that is definitely one tip. If you can, put a parent in the back seat with your kid or kids if you have like a minivan. And then, which we do not, we have an SUV, so it doesn't work for us. But
So,
and
so
then,
we need the voice of wisdom over here. Sheridan needs to give us her best tips for either flying or driving.
Oh my goodness. Flying. Have snacks. Have all the snacks, and same goes for driving too. I mean, I still take snacks, and my kids are much older, but that's the first thing they break into as soon as we pull out of the driveway. You're never too old for snacks, I guess. Another tip is I always had would go buy new things for them, like coloring books or things that were easy to pack. I also they each had their own small backpack where they got to put toys or the coloring books or stuff like that. So it was their choice, their entertainment kind of thing. And then not allowing them to take everything out at once, a little bit at a time, so that everything didn't wear off. Um, and then I guess the other tip I always did for flying is considered, our where we were going and when we would arrive, when we would leave. I preferred to fly earlier in the morning with my kids. There was less room for error as far as canceled flights, which is very much a thing to consider these days. Yeah, I preferred to get there so that way, we had time to get to the hotel, rest up, and hit the ground running.
For sure, for sure. And I completely agree with you. The activities one at a time is the secret. That's what I do whenever we fly, and it works in the car too. But like definitely when we fly, I have Ziploc bags of each activity, and I have roughly 6 to 7 activities that are each more or less designed to hold her attention for like 10 minutes. Usually it's more like 5, but I pull a new thing out. Here you go. I play with this. And whenever she's bored of that, great. Here's the next one. And here's the next one. We rotate until she refuses any of it. And then we throw the iPad out and we go from there. And then she gets bored of that and we go back to the activities again. But yeah, the one at a time is the magic of it. Specifically, I will just like throw out there the Color Wonder markers are magic. Magic. They don't get on the airplane seat or on the window or anything else. They only color on the paper that it's designed to color. It's fantastic. Also, there is an aqua, I can't remember the name of it, but it's aqua something, and it's you paint with water, which is really cool because then you fill up the little paint container with water. And after you get through TSA, don't do it beforehand. But you can sit there and color on the special pages, and it turns the right colors, and they love that. My 3-year-old adores those things, and they make zero mess which is magic. Also, like totally random thing, but has kept my child occupied. Since she was probably about 8 months old, all the way through to now, is, you know, the spice jars that have like a little that have holes in the top. Fill it with toothpicks, and then as the activity, you open it up, take the toothpicks out, put the cap back on with those little holes, and she just has the best time just putting the toothpicks back in through the holes. I swear, it's like, you wouldn't think it's the best activity, but I keep it with me now because like she's thrilled. So just throwing
You
those
put
out.
toothpicks on a
They're
plane?
good.
Will that pass TSA?
They do. They most
Oh.
certainly do.
Not considered weapons.
Hey, you
Okay.
don't show up on the X-ray, right?
Very true. Very true.
One plane tip that we wish we had done earlier on is if you fly often, and really even once a year, I would define as often given the price point, is TSA pre-check.
Yes.
So when you do that, you essentially get to skip the security line, which is huge in MCO in Orlando, and I'm sure LAX in Los Angeles. I've not flown through there in a very long time, but I imagine that is also mobbed. And you essentially get to skip the security line for the most part. There still might be like a 10-15 minute wait, but it's like a fast pass Genie Plus uh, for TSA security. Plus, you don't have to take your shoes off. You don't have to take your laptop out. You don't have to do any of that stuff that just creates more time consumption. And so you get through it faster. And y- like, again, like you don't want to be standing in line with your kids. It's just another boring thing for them to do and to attempt to keep them occupied. And the TSA lines at MCO can get to be half hour or longer. And so it's a huge, I think it's $80 for like 4 years of I
5.
think is five. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, TSA pre-check. And so we for some reason thought this was like an uber expensive service, and so we never did it. And then someone was like, it's $80. And we're like, what? And so yeah, the first several times we flew to Disney with our daughter, it was just like, and like we were dragging car seats and strollers, and it's just like, and and we all know you end up carrying your child even though you have a fully capable stroller. And so it's like holding my daughter for 40 minutes in line at MCO is not the grand Disney experience you're hoping for. Whereas pre-check, we just glide through, and it's so nice, and they know how to handle the strollers and everything, and it's just so
For sure.
if if it fits your budget, just do it, especially if you're gonna fly, annually to really anywhere.
For sure. And I'll throw out a free option, which a lot of people don't know about. Specifically for MCO, there are other airports out there who offer the service, but MCO does. There's something called Clear Reserve, and you can Google it, but it is free. I know Clear is not, traditional Clear is not, but the Clear Reserve at MCO, you can go on and you can schedule, you're reserving a specific time to go through TSA. And so you'll then go through the reserved line. Now, the trick with that, yes, it's free, but if you have TSA pre-check, they don't count that lane as pre-check. So you will still have to take your shoes off and some of those other things, but you don't have to worry about a line even with pre-check. So if you're thinking about traveling like during a really, really busy season where even pre-check is going to be bad, think Christmas, think New Year's, that might be something to look into. Those reservations only open up, I believe it's 3 days prior, 2 or 3 days prior. Don't quote me on that. So you do have to like log in and do it, but that's an option for something that's free.
That's really cool. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, very cool. Like I said, it's only a few airports in the US, but MCO is one of them. So there you go. The other thing I'll mention too on TSA, just as a note for anyone who needs it, there is a program that I found out about recently, and it's called TSA Cares. And you can go into the TSA website, you can apply for it, and basically what it is it's additional assistance if you need it through TSA. So this is most commonly used for families who have autistic children, for diabetics who are traveling with additional medical supplies, but there's a plethora of reasons that you can utilize this. All you have to do is go in and apply for it. You tell them when your flights are going to be, when you think you're going to be going through. and they'll get back to you closer to your flight days. But just throwing out there that is a free service that TSA offers for families that need a little extra assistance and time through TSA. So with that, we're going to move into the news section. But before that, do you know how sometimes you need a vacation from your vacation? It doesn't have to be that way. With our concierge level service, you can have a relaxing planning process and a spectacular vacation experience. So just go to thetravelgenieshow.com to start planning. So on to the news. Sherida, take it away.
Alrighty, my Star Wars fans. Both at Disney World and Disneyland, there are options there where you can enhance your vacation, where you can build a lightsaber or build a droid. I have done both of these with my son, and they are a fantastic fun thing to do. A very more unique souvenir, but they also just got a little bit pricier. In the past, all you had to do was reserve your day and your time 60 days in advance from your stay, and you didn't have to. That was it. Just showed up. But now they have made it where you actually have to prepay for these before you get to go. So it's something to keep in mind as you're budgeting for these things. And as with everything else, the price has gone up a little bit. The lightsaber is now $249.99, and to do the droid, it's $119.99. So now with them wanting you to prepay, put the credit card down and all of that ahead of time, it's just something to keep in mind as you're budgeting for your trip, and not to be surprised when you do get that charge before you even get to build any of these cool little toy souvenirs.
Perfect. And Joel, I think you had some news for us as well.
Yeah, I do. So, little update on Yacht and Beach Club construction or refurbishments. So, unfortunately, refurbishments happen all the time to make things better for future guests, but they can present a little bit of an inconvenience for guests traveling during that refurbishment period. So, Disney recently announced that Yacht Club, some rooms will be starting to be refurbished uh, January through May 2025. So that's not 2024 now, that's going to be next year. So if you've booked a vacation anytime from January to May 2025 at Yacht Club specifically, just a heads up that you may be able to hear some construction happening depending on your room. If that does happen and it's an inconvenience, honestly, go down to the front desk and let them know. Hopefully that will be minimal, and a lot of times it's only during the day when most guests are at the parks. But just a heads up there that you may want to book an alternate resort instead of Yacht Club. And then along those same lines, impacting both Yacht and Beach Club is Stormalong Bay, which in my opinion is the coolest pool, really the coolest pool that I have ever been to, straight up, but also on Disney property, is going to be going under a lengthy refurbishment. And so it's going to be closed from January to June, again, 2025. So if you are looking at traveling to Disney January to June 2025, which I know I am, you may want to look elsewhere if you're planning to do that resort day for the pool at Stormalong Bay. There's a lot of great pools for our property, a lot of great resorts, and so don't cancel your Disney World trip. But just a heads up that if you are planning to travel, that's January to June 2025, that Stormalong Bay will be closed at Yacht and Beach Club. And so there's still the quiet pools. And so especially if you're going as a couple, the quiet pool may be more your jam anyway, rather than the crowded and loud Stormalong Bay. But especially for those traveling with the young kids, that's a really cool pool, and I'd recommend looking at a different resort. The good news is, if you do book with us, we will have that information in our back pocket, and we will steer you in an alternative direction. And so these are great resorts. It's a great pool when they're fully functioning, but just a heads up, plan accordingly.
Also, a really good excuse to have to book that other trip, that next trip, after refurbishment's done, to go back and enjoy what you missed out on before.
It's
Yes.
a good reason to go book one of the monorail resorts. Go check out the especially the Polynesian. They have a beautiful pool and a beach. So you can't swim in the beach, but you can certainly watch the fireworks from there and eat your Dole Whip. So
Yes, because the Dole Whip is the important part here.
yeah,
So thank you so much for joining us. Remember to follow us on your favorite podcast app and join us next time for more Disney tips, tricks, and pineapple whips.
bye.